Hello, my name is Jackie Gilbert. Thanks for being here. I'm here with Nicole. We work with One Thread Collective. I'm the co-founder, and Nicole has been working with us for the last 3 years. We just had an amazing trip to Colombia for the last month, and so we thought to just have some mate together and recap our trip.
So how many trips have you guys done?
So 7 trips following me living there for a year. 7 times, I mean, you think about, like, I've been to San Francisco 7 times. You know, like, the difference is that when we're here, we're getting so much done. So the 2 weeks or 3 weeks or month that we're here, we're having 1,000 different experiences. So it's like really intensive. There's no sleep. No, there is a little bit of sleep. There's no rest, I should say. The sleep is like the 6 hours we can like cram in before we wake up at 6 in the morning and keep working. So those 2 weeks or 1 month that we're here, it feels like we've been here for like 6 months, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We work with 8 remote communities, so we have to creatively figure out how are we going to visit all of the communities because they all live in they're all located in different parts of the region. So we're like, okay, we're going to go to this community for half the day and then take a colectivo taxi to this community, sleep overnight there, wake up early, do another meeting there. Then we got to get back to the office for a workshop, and then we have to go to another community, and then we have to get back to the office for another workshop, and then we have a meeting with so-and-so. And then, I mean, it's insane the amount of things that we cram into one trip, right?
Yeah. And also, you really have to be very strategic because everything is far. So it takes to half an hour, and that's a quick trip. That's a quick half an hour, maybe 2 hours ride and motorcycle and hitchhike. And so yes, we do need to be very on top of the schedule.
And for people that don't know, where is La Guajira? How do you get there? Like from a plane starting from LA?
LA, you fly into Bogota, or to Medellin. Those are the 2 airports in Colombia that have international flights. And from either Medellin or Bogota, you take a flight to Riohacha. Riohacha is the city where we have our office. And
it's like our home base.
Yeah.
So we go to the office, we drop all of our stuff off. This time I lost my flight in Bogota. Nicole had to go on without me. And when I arrived, I stayed overnight in Bogota, took the early morning flight because there's a 7 a.m. flight, and the flights go until like 4 p.m. or something.
4.
And I got off the plane, went to the office, put my stuff down, grabbed my backpack, and we got on a moto and went straight to the first community visit.
Yeah.
From Riohacha. So within like hours of waking up and getting on a plane, I'm like on a moto for 2 hours or an hour and a half, going to do our first meeting in community. So it's just like that. Like as soon as we hit the ground.
Being in La Guajira, you are surprised every day. You think you saw it all, but no. There's always something new, something more creative to resolve a problem. They are very, very resourceful. I
feel like you're referring to something specific.
Oh, no, everything.
Okay.
Everything. Like from how they travel, how many people go on a motorcycle, how they fix their power problem, how in rancherias there is no signal for the phone, so you will see a tiny phone
tied to a pole
because that is the only spot that there is signal, and they will put the phone on speaker because you can't take the phone out because you will lose service.
Yeah, like people always find a way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's always very creative, and we're like, wow, I never thought to do it like that.
It's very, very awesome. I mean, it's definitely not everyone has the ability to think like out of the box, like how I've seen it.
Unless you live with very few resources and and you wake up every day and you have to make the most out of the resources that you have, which requires you to get creative and we also just like one of the things that I learn every time I'm there, it's like a lesson that I just keep learning over and over and over, is how important it is to be in community and to share resources, and just the generosity that Wayuu people have with their family members and with their neighbors. Like this last time we did a yamana, which is a Wayuu tradition. So the first community we went to, Obejomana, they are building a store as part of their community project. So we set aside a certain amount of our proceeds from our sales to to invest into community-led projects. So their community-led project is to have a grocery co-op where they can sell food in bulk to the villagers, because there's no stores, there's no source of reliable source of food in the community, and during the rainy months the road washes out and people can't get to the city, and so they all just start sharing food. One person has an extra bag of rice, and basically people just go door to door and they find a way to get everyone fed. But the yamana is a tradition where all the men in the community get together and they work on a project, whether it's like building someone a house or building a new, we call it an enramada, it's just like an open air structure without walls. This time we built a store, and the women are cooking while the men are working. And that's just something that we don't have in our countries. Like, can you imagine asking your friends, like, hey, let's all get together and build me a house today, and I'm not going to pay any of you, but I'll make you a soup. Like,
well, it's not a soup. They get a chivo.
Yeah.
They make enough food for not only to feed the people that are working that day, but for them to take home.
Mm-hmm. Right, they get a big plate of food. That's true.
Yeah. And they make a delicious chicha that they also take home. So yeah, they make a abundant amount of food and drinks for the people that are helping to take home and share with their families. Mm-hmm. The elder or the more experienced man, they're teaching the younger men, so it's very nice, because it's, as long as you want to help and you want to learn, you can be part of the project, and you learn as you are building it, like, literally.
Yeah. We're always figuring out how to channel money based on what ideas come from the women. We don't say, like, you guys need a bathroom, or you guys need a school. The ideas first come from them, and then we brainstorm together, like, okay, how can we make this with the little bit of resources that we have, and do it in the most efficient way that's not going to cause conflicts in the communities, that's not going to, in 1 year from now, completely fall apart. Most community projects fail globally. There's some crazy statistic, I don't know it with certainty off the top of my head, but it's something like at least 80% of community projects fail, because the ideas are not coming from the people who are the experts, who live in the community, who know the community because that's their home. And so we just happen to be doing construction projects right now because those are the ideas that came from the women. So one of them is a well, a community, like a water storage well, and that's in a community called El Aumao. And they're going to collectively manage the water and sell the water to the community at a little bit of a premium. It's going to be cheaper than what they can buy from anywhere else in the community. But then the artisans themselves get to buy the water at cost, and they're rotating the responsibilities and collectively managing the accounting. So that's one project to solve water scarcity, and then we have the store to solve food security, and then we have a big center that we're helping our partners at Fundación Talento Colectivo build, and that's a huge project, big, huge classroom space, a store, a restaurant, cabañas.
The idea for that project is to build a place, a property, where people that are interested in knowing and doing an immersion in the culture of La Guajira and knowing how Fundación Talento Colectivo works and One Thread works, they're able to go to that place and they'll be helping and volunteering with the workshops that happen over there. They're going to be helping in the kitchen with the local produce.
Yeah, and they're gonna grow
yeah.
They're gonna grow food right there on the property. Yeah, it's almost like it's a center for women. It's an Airbnb. It's a hostel,
school.
It's a store. It's a school above all else.
Yeah,
and it's a place where the women are the protagonists and they're getting employment. They're benefiting from the project. And they are the centerpiece of the property. So that's a big project that falta mucho. We
just started.
Paula, our partner at Fundación Talento Colectivo, just built she built the classroom space, but there's a lot more that needs to be invested. And then we have the Enramada and Tocoromana, which we visited, which is beautiful. It's just like a space for the artisans. It's like an open air structure, space for the artisans to bring tourists to come and learn how to weave and buy products directly from the artisans and drink coffee with the artisans and ask them questions. So yeah, pretty much all of our community projects right now are in the kind of construction phase, which is really challenging. But
but we learn a lot, and it's really interesting also to learn with them, right? Because I mean, One Thread Collective, we do have workshops in the school and workshops for weaving and quality control and this and that, but we also learn about...
We also build wells.
Presupuestos and what do you need in materials to build a well, to build a tienda, you know. It's very interesting also, like when we were building this shop in Ovejumana, the bulk shop, there was two ways of building. It was material with bricks and concrete, and there was their way of building, which is with wood, and the walls are mud, you know. So that is also very interesting in diving into that adventure of knowing other ways of building and bioconstrucción. It's very, very interesting to see and to hear them talk and figure it out how they all as a collective can help, you know. So the men are the ones that really are building it, but also the women know where the materials are, you know. They know where to get the stones and the sand and the caña.
And they're sending their kids out to gather all that stuff.
And everyone is involved in that, you know, from getting the materials, bringing it to the place where it's going to be built, to making the food for the men that are building the shop.
It takes a village.
It takes a village.
And it's beautiful because at the end, everyone's so proud. They all had part in the project. And, you know, when we take that last picture of all of them, they're all smiling and just looking so accomplished, and they're going to care for that space forever. It's not a piece of infrastructure that was gifted like so many NGOs do. They just like build a bathroom or build someone a house, and there's no value there. There's, because it came for free and because it came from outside of the community, it doesn't have the same value that something has when everyone put their blood, sweat, and tears.
Well, not blood.
Not blood.
And tears.
Yeah, just sweat. And that's why these projects end up being successful. And I actually learned that from when I was in Bolivia working with a man named Oscar Oliveira, who has a beautiful foundation and they build water rain catchment, these cool like rain catchment, like an igloo, and it's made out of cement, but it's really hard work. It's really hard to build. And he puts up the materials, so his foundation pays for the materials and pays for one expert to come in and guide the whole process, and then they ask the community to put up the mano de obra, the labor. And what I noticed every time when I was part of these projects was that it was the women that showed up every single time. It's like you would think the men would show up because they're like the ones with experience with construction, but no, for every 20 women there was one man. So I was quite literally doing construction work with like these badass women in their like traditional, in their fandas and the cholitas with their braids and their hats and their beautiful skirts, and they're like lifting huge bags of cement, and it was the most backbreaking labor of my life. And it was all led by women. So I took that idea to Colombia and was like, okay, we're not, even though the communities of course asked, are you going to pay for the mano de obra? We said, no, you guys are going to pay for that. And we can find creative ways for you to pay for it. Maybe every woman in the community weaves a bag and we pay for the bag, and then that money goes to the man who's doing the construction.
Yeah, or we lend them a microloan. But yeah, that was, and it's so, I mean, for me, it was such a inspirational moment to, on the very last day, right after the tienda was built, and there were still some details on how to manage the money, the products, how to keep the place clean and well maintained. How the women were the heart and the brain of the project, and they felt so proud. Mm-hmm. So proud. And as soon as there was a little bit of como fricción between the group of women that we were talking to, which are the owners of the shop, mm-hmm. and their husbands and brothers and primos. Mm-hmm. There was a little moment where the women and we were all in the kitchen talking about this, teaching about math and blah 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 blah. And when we started talking about needing the floor being done and some other details on just to make sure that the construction was good to go fully, in a second all the men disappeared from the kitchen and they went to the enramada to negotiate between them, between them and get together and make sure that they were asking for X amount of money, and then one of them, a representative, will come into the kitchen with the woman and he will say, oh no, because that's a lot of work, so that takes a lot of time, so we're asking for this amount of money. And the women instantly were, no. And they started talking in Wayuu Nike between them, and then translating for us in Spanish to tell us what was happening. And then this representative of the group of men will go outside again and then come back later, 10 minutes later, and say like, okay, yes, we accept your deal, Yeah. It was very interesting. And I shared with the women, how proud, me personally, I feel about them, seeing how proud they are of this project that they have together, and how como protective they are, mm-hmm. Because it's very easy, and especially en una cultura tan machista, ¿no? También como ceder a que el hombre takes control because they know more, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, we don't know that much. Maybe math is a little tricky for us, mm-hmm. but we're going to learn. Mm-hmm. And for example, Yamile, now that she's studying to finish high school, and she's learning
Not high
about
school,
elementary
She's
school.
starting all the way from the beginning.
Yeah.
To read and write and learn math.
And exactly, so now that she's learning math, she's bringing this problematic that is in the community, you know, with percentage and this and this and that. She's averages, and she's taking that situation that's happening in the community. She's gonna take it to school with her, so that her teacher teach Yamile how to do it properly. So she will take that knowledge to community, to the women, and explain everything for them.
Yeah, we were sitting there with like a piece of paper and drawing out calendars and explaining like what is an average. And it's funny because we grow up learning that from what, like, I don't know, 10 years old. I don't know when we learn about multiplication and division and averages. I feel like the third grade, maybe like 10 years or 9 years. I don't know. But we take it so for granted. And then when you're like in a community where it's not English or Spanish is not their first language, and I'm like, God, what the hell is an average? Like, I don't even know how to explain it. And so we're doing like a million examples and trying to also put it into their terms, like, using examples of like how many chivos, goats, or
yarn, or
yeah. And then Yamile is just like beautifully translating it to Wayuu Nike and like using all these examples and like props. And she's an amazing interpreter. She needs to be like a hired interpreter for major NGOs in Wayuu territory, because she's so good. But it's really cool. We learn everything every time. I don't know how to explain an average very easily. I need to learn. I need to go back to algebra. No, not even algebra. I need to go back to fourth grade. But everyone can use a calculator. And some of them have phones. So, a lot of our work is like teaching people how to do basic things. Like, they're really smart in their ways, and they're very resourceful. But, we do have a certain level of like teaching in our jobs when we're in the fields, for sure.
Yeah.
So La Guajira is here's Colombia. La Guajira is in the northeast, and it's a peninsula that's facing Haiti. It's on the Caribbean coast. It's a dry tropical forest, which is a super endangered ecosystem in Colombia. Very small amount of land in Colombia is considered dry tropical forest. And then as you go north into the tip of the peninsula, which is the northernmost point in South America, you get into like pure sand dunes, pure desert. Nothing is growing except for some cactuses here and there. But the southern part of La Guajira has that tropical forest vibe. There's monkeys, there's jaguars, there's rivers and big tall trees and canopies. It's not like the Amazon. It's drier than that, but it does have like a lushness about it. We kind of work more in the center of in the Media Guajira. And, there's cactus, there's some trees. The trees have really small little leaves, and they can breathe water from the air. And the climate's just getting drier and drier. You're seeing a lot more desertification, not only from climate change, but also from deforestation, and so much extraction by coal mining companies, oil companies. There's deforestation caused by, wind companies, and just a lot of people growing food. And basically the territory has become almost, I don't want to say unlivable, but the way that people used to live off the land and be able to hunt iguanas and small animals and be able to do subsistence agriculture.
Just 20 years ago.
Yeah, and relying on the rainy seasons, which it does rain in chunks throughout the year, and people knew to, put their seeds down right before the rains, and there was a way that people were surviving off the land, and the Wayuu were semi-nomadic way back in the, pre-Columbian era. They wouldn't even be called the Wayuu, but the kind of ancestors of the Wayuu were semi-nomadic, and the Wayuu were semi-nomadic to a point. But now the challenges are that you can't really grow food. You can't really rely on the rainy season because climate change has changed everything. The wells are, I mean, the water table is drying up. The wells have to be perforated so deep into the ground that it's completely cost ineffective. It's not possible to build those wells anymore because they're so expensive, and people are buying food. So suddenly a culture that went from being able to subsist and with small agriculture and hunting and gathering to a point, and then also pastoralism of they have their goat herds. They're moving into buying everything, buying their water, which is expensive. I mean, they have to buy water from trucks that bring it from the south to the north, and it's expensive when you live off of $1 a day or less than $1 a day. How can you possibly buy water? And so I would say water and food scarcity are the biggest problems in La Guajira.
For me, I mean, yeah, this scarcity that you are talking about, I mean, they were able to have their gardens and grow their food, yeah, just 20, 30 years ago,
Right.
you know, and you talk to anyone that's like closer to their 40s, so yeah, closer to their 40s, and they will tell you, like when they were younger, they will go out to the monte and yeah, hunt for iguanas and rabbits and fish and this and that. So it wasn't that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when this actually started happening. So this is new, and it takes, I mean, imagine the difficulty as a culture, right? That you are so used to be able to live off the land of your grandparents, of your parents, you know, and now having such difficulty to have good water, you know, like people really struggle with the water. The babies have infections and rashes, and all because of the water that they're able to get, which is, of course, not really good quality.
Mm-hmm.
And the rivers that they were counting with to, yeah, grow their food, water for their chivos, drinkable water for them, it's either dried or contaminated by just big empresas and businesses that are, ¿cómo se dicen? Well,
They're extracting
Yeah.
energy resources from the ground, and they're shipping them out. Those,
so yeah.
the Wayuu don't have electricity. They don't have running water. They don't have potable water, but they have such a wealth of natural, I don't even like to say natural resources, but you know what I mean. They have a wealth of minerals and fossil fuels and precious metals that are worth a lot of money. And
For other people.
And so the Wayuu live in what we would call a climate sacrifice zone. They, their region is exploited for the benefit of people in other countries, and in Colombia
outside,
too.
Outside La Guajira.
Yeah, and then they live with the contamination. Not only that, but they also live with climate change because it's an area that is just extremely, you know, it's very vulnerable to these changes in climate. A dry tropical forest is already teetering on the edge of water scarcity and desertification, but then you add all these other things in. You add climate change and you add desertification deforestation, and suddenly, very quickly, a region that used to sustain tens of thousands of families is now becoming unlivable, and that's led to the commercialization of mochilas because the Wayuu used to, women, you know, here and there would be a small number of women in a community that could weave and that would sell their weavings to other Wayuu people. And
As a way of trading.
yeah, and also like around like a wedding or a baby being born, it was something that happened on like a much smaller scale. And now that there's so few income earning opportunities for women, and there's just few income earning opportunities in general, and people are buying everything, now weaving has become the primary source of income for Wayuu families, and now women have become the primary breadwinners through their weavings.
Not only Wayuu, but in Santa Marta, we learned that the other indigenous communities like Kogis and Wiwas, they also, from living out in the mountains up there, way up there, they are now, forced to go down to the pueblo, to the small town to sell their mochilas, because it's really fast on like getting money and being able to buy food, because this happens in La Guajira all along, and I'm sure worldwide.
Yeah, but I think the commercialization of mochilas is on a whole, of Wayuu mochilas is on a whole nother level than the commercialization of like Kogi and Wiwan.
Well, and also especially after it was, they were recognized as like an icon, cultural icon from Colombia.
Yeah.
And now it's everywhere.
Everywhere you travel in the world, you'll see a Wayuu mochila. Whether you're in Japan or Italy or the U.S. or other parts of South America, everywhere you go, you're going to see Wayuu mochilas. And that's all recent. This is blown up in the last 20 years. I mean, weaving is like the foundation of our work because it's the marketable skill that the women have, and it's how they make their money. So weaving is the kind of the base of what we do. We provide income for women through monthly projects. They come to the office in Riohacha. They receive their yarn for their next project. They hand in their previous project. They receive their money. And so that's kind of happening in the background of everything that we're doing, is like, let's lift up women out of a state of emergency. Let's get them consistent income so that they can feed their kids and buy their medicine and kind of cover their basic needs. But then we're also doing a lot of capacity building workshops, so teaching them new skills, helping them sort of diversify their economy and their income, so that they don't only have to rely on weaving. But of course, it is a huge part of what we do. And in fact, we do 3 monthly workshops. The third one is our innovation workshop. And that was like, we ended our trip in La Guajira on International Women's Day at this workshop. And it was just like,
First one of the year. Well, the
first innovation workshop
yeah.
of the year. And it was beautiful. I mean, I don't even have words for how special that workshop was, because it was like a reclaiming of ancestral knowledge. It was the idea of the workshop is for the best artisans in One Thread Collective. We work with over 115 artisans, so we selected a few from this community, a couple from that community. They're the best artisans that we work with in terms of like just the quality of their weaving, and they've also graduated from our other workshops. And now they're at this sort of superior level of like creativity, and we asked Paula, so our partner, and she teaches all of our workshops. She basically led the women in this experience, in this sort of meditative experience of
creative experience.
Of like finding the inner grandma, finding the abuelita, because we have the blood and the conocimiento and the DNA and we carry this history from our ancestors. And the abuelitas, the elders of Wayuu culture, are the ones who came up with those original designs. There's maybe a dozen of like the old Wayuu designs. And then since then, Wayuu weaving has become it's just all about like trying to sell and commercializing, and Wayuu people will see pictures on the internet and they'll weave a bag that has like an emoji on it or something. They're just
or people like Frida Kahlo that belong to other cultures and other countries cultures. They modify their art to make it more attractive to the buyer.
Right.
And in a way, it's great because they do achieve the ability of mastering and transforming their knowledge and make it more adaptable to the the world nowadays, but it's very como on the edge of como
No es propio.
eso, selling your como tu cultura, ¿no?
Yeah.
Para hacerlo más agradable al mercado, and that is not what we are interested in.
Right. Yeah, so the propósito of this monthly workshop is for the women to like reclaim their ancestral knowledge and create mochilas that tell a story and tell a story of lo bonito de la cultura Wayuu and
Lo único del
Sí,
territorio también,
ajá.
¿no? Como
and the knowledge that they have that we don't necessarily have. So like a mochila that symbolizes birth and how the Wayuu abuelas would give birth in the most natural and just human ways, as opposed to now where we're like laying on our backs in a
just make it more
hospital
comfortable
room.
for the cirujano,
For the doctor,
male.
right. So that, and you know, a lot of Wayuu people are giving birth in hospitals now. So that discussion was like, okay, how did your grandma give birth to your mother, and how did your great grandmother give birth to your grandma? Let's reclaim that knowledge of like being a partera. So Paula asked, who in this room has a relative who's a partera? And one woman was like, oh, my grandma was a partera. Okay, go to your grandma and interview her. And let's start thinking about like what colors and what designs could symbolize that old way of childbirth. That's essentially what we're trying to do right now. And there's all kinds of great ideas that the women are coming up with our support and with Paula's support about things that Wayuu culture has to share with the world. Food, plant medicine.
Mm-hmm. Everyone has a friend that is into the herbalism, right? Like I am, definitely. But I feel like we grow technologically and como en lo teórico so much, you know, we achieved and we develop all this technology and all this knowledge and all these cities and all these smart cars and this and this and that. But people are really seeking to go back to the roots where we all come from. And that is happening because
we're all sick.
We're all sick and saturated of everything that is happening all the time and all the information and all the, ¿cómo se dice? Como opciones en el mercado, you know, everyone is rushing to be like the ultimate creator of some kind of weird technology. But what that creates is that we start forgetting our own wisdom and our own intuition. So people are feeling lost, and that's why there's a bunch of us that are trying to go back, seeking that knowledge
from indigenous people
that our grandmothers had. And the indigenous people in this world, in this planet, are the guardians of that. So that's also another reason why we are ayudando y apoyando the Wayuu, because
their culture is being lost.
Yep. And it's very important to help preserve that. And that will only happen con el intercambio between this world and their world.
And not only preserve, but allow indigenous folks to do their art and create their culture in real time, because nothing can just be conserved in a little museum. When we're talking about culture,
sí.
It's something that moves and changes and evolves, and there's no like good culture and bad culture. It's just always changing. And so that's another thing we have to be careful of is like, let's not just keep reproducing the designs of the abuelas.
No.
Because those designs no corresponden con la vida ahora. But let's create new cultural designs that are symbolic of Wayuu lifestyle and art and history and everything, usos y costumbres. And then, in 20 years, probably people will be reproducing the mochilas that we're creating right now with the women. And it'll have some cool name in Wayuu Nike, and it'll be like Yamile and Maribel and all these women that we work with who are the first ones to make those designs. Yeah, well, I think having to modify our trip because of the situation that's happening in not only in La Guajira but all around Colombia of just increased violence in the last year. We normally would visit every single community that we work with, and this time we had to cancel 3 community visits because of a paramilitary that's super active in the region, and we're getting texts of videos of awful things happening, and at the same time, on the one hand, they're like, look at this is terrible, and then on the other hand, when we ask them, well, some of them, when we ask, like, is it safe? Should we cancel our trip? No, it's fine. Like, nothing's going to happen. So there's also a normalization of violence and sort of they're accustomed to a level of violence that we can't really imagine. In Santa Barbara, I know in other parts of the U.S., there's people wake up every day and deal with tons of violence. But like in my sheltered life in Santa Barbara, I don't have to worry about going to visit a friend and getting abducted by a paramilitary group, which is something that people in La Guajira have to live with. We, of course, when we go on our trips, we make sure everything's super safe. When we bring people to Colombia, we do our homework. We do a ton of checking in and following the news. And, we're never going to go or bring people to a place where there's any risk of something happening to them.
And we always also work with the same people. We build relationship with the neighbors and the communities. And so we do work with the same people over and over again, and that it's beautiful because it creates a beautiful relationship, and it also, Colombians en general, pero en La Guajira también, o sea, sobre todo the people that we work with, they are our family. So if anything is a little dangerous or they will let us know, and they won't, even though they might be like como normalizing all this violence that is happening in the territory, they will tell us, what's happening. They will be completely transparent to us, and that keeps us safe. Right? On this trip and the other ones, and I'm sure it will keep us safe in the future trips and visits that we do. So that is also something very important that that we work with family. And we're always surrounded by people that are good.
They have our back.
So, we've started doing this solidarity trips last year, and we do it once a year. And it's for people that are very curious on the work that we do and in the Wayuu culture. Definitely, it needs to be people that are adventurous and are comfortable with shifting and adapting to the environment. Because we do stay, for example, in hotels in the city, but we also visit communities for the day, and we also stay in community for 1 or 2 nights, and that it's totally off the grid, right? So there's usually no electricity, there's water, but there's no showers or bathrooms. So it is I love it. We love it. Sleeping in chinchorros. Yeah, so it's very like out there, out in the nature, and yeah, super immersive. And so people should be okay with going into the bushes or maybe waking up in the morning with the chicken right next to your ear or a baby goat.
Having group showers.
Having group showers under the moonlight. And sharing food and just the fire at night with
Sitting on the ground.
Sitting on the ground in community. For me, it's very nourishing to my soul. And I think
But not many people can handle it.
not many people can handle it. I personally believe that people need to experience that at least once in their life, because just living in a house where you turn on the water and you have hot and cold water, that is not natural. Sorry to break it for you, but that is not natural. That took a long time for people for the human race to actually build a system that allows us to have a fridge, to have internet, to have water, to have fire without making a fire, without burning stuff, right? And so going into the community and sharing with them and cooking with them and going out in the bush to get wood and taking bucket showers, and that is mind-blowing. It's a reality check, because, for example, taking a bucket shower, you actually see how much water it takes for you to get clean. And
Which isn't much.
It isn't much. It's not having the shower on for 20 minutes, running water. Well, maybe a little more.
Two of those.
But it is a wake-up call on how am I using the resources that I have at home, right? And I think that it's very important that everyone has that experience at least once, because that is the only way of getting out of your comfort zone and actually realizing that whatever you're consuming, it has an impact, and it's coming from somewhere. And if you're using, what was the average of the U.S. water use?
At least 200 liters of water per day. 250 liters
per
of water per day.
person in the U.S. And we were talking with Maribel in El Ahumado, and we were asking how much water her family was using per day, and it was...
I used to do a lot of water surveying with my research, and definitely 100% the Wayuu are using less than 10 liters of water per person per day. I'm going to correct myself. I think it's 400 liters per day in the U.S. And the Wayuu per person 400, and the Wayuu are using less than 10. Maribel's case was 7. And she was like, it's a lot.
And she was feeling ashamed on how much water
her son uses.
Yeah, she was like, oh, I'm gonna tell my peladito that her son that he shouldn't be washing clothes so much. Like she was like genuinely worried about the amount of water that they were using. And Jackie was like whispering to me, it's like, I feel so bad I'm not even going to tell her how much water the U.S. per person uses.
Yeah. Can I follow up on your question? So just to follow up on your question about who we want to come on these trips, this is really important because on the one hand, the trips are meant to help raise money for our programs. And on the other hand, we have to be super careful about who we bring into these communities, because we, like Nicole was saying, we are family, and when we bring people, they are welcomed as family. And the Wayuu people that we go and stay with overnight or that we spend a day with, they never forget that day. That might be the first, second, third time that they've met Arihunas, so non-Wayuu people from the U.S. or from, in this trip we had someone from Mexico, and they'll never forget that experience in their life. So we still, we're texting with the women, and they're still asking about people I brought to Colombia 3 years ago. And they're like, what happened to them? They haven't texted me back because, they become friends on the trip and they trade numbers. And so we have to recognize that, like, now these people that we're bringing are part of our community and part of our family. This isn't poverty tourism. This isn't, it's not about, like, I love what you were saying about people need to have a reality check, but that's still not the root of why we're bringing people to La Guajira. That's kind of a side.
It's a side comment.
It's it's a byproduct of what happens when you travel here. But the reason our intention with bringing people into these communities is for them to support. And so, we're bringing people who have a vision of supporting long-term, whether it be, in Miko's case, she does social media for us, but she needed to be there to see what's going on the ground and what these communities are like for her to do her job effectively. In the case of Lucy, she's one of our board members, and she has a really important role in our organization and on our board, helping us with strategy, and it's important for her to know what it's like there. So so far these trips have been like people who are in our circle and who have the intention of being of support in really meaningful ways, whether it be a grant from their family foundation or their service on our board and their personal donations, or maybe they're going to work with us on grant writing or blah, blah, blah. So that's just to say that, like, we're not just going to bring anyone, Yes, it costs money. Yes, we benefit from the donation that's included with the trip fee, but we're not just going to take that from anyone.
No.
They have to be there because not for their own personal awakening or their own personal journey in an egoic sense, but because they're aligned with our mission and they're, like, genuinely committed to working towards our shared goals. There is right now a lot of people are waking up to indigenous knowledge, and they're waking up to all that we have to learn from these people that live in what some people would consider, like, more primitive, even though that's a terrible word. But there's 50 years ago, no one cared about indigenous people. The few people cared about indigenous people. Now it's become, it's very much, like, in vogue in a way. Yeah. There's a lot of people who are, going down to South America and doing medicine journeys and trying to, like, change their lives and open their minds and connect with their intuition and blah, blah, blah. But what I notice and what I just want to point out in a loving way is that we have to not be thinking about our own personal spiritual journey, but think about how we can uplift communities so that those traditions are not lost, so that those teachings can continue to be passed down. It's not about us, no. It's about helping indigenous people pass down knowledge in their own ways. And if we are going down to do ayahuasca ceremonies, or the Wayuu don't do ayahuasca, but you know what I mean, do plant medicine journeys because we need to deal with our own shit, that's not being part of the solution. If we're going with the intention of opening our minds so that we can be of service to the planet and to
that's not
people,
sustainable.
And it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable because you go there, you take, and then that's it. You don't.
And then you go back to your disconnected life.
Yeah, and maybe it's gonna last you like maybe 6 months. Maybe you're gonna be talking about this awakening moment that you had for like a year or something, but it's within the practice. Maybe you go to one of these like trips or experiences like every year, blah blah blah. But the true change happens when you can sostener este trabajo, and you're able to sostener este trabajo either when you're here, for example, in La Guajira, or when you're over there back into your town, into your city, and you're able to be socially aware. Right? Socially aware, be involved in your community. And yeah, like we were saying before, just like being conscious and aware of whatever you're como taking, whatever you're consuming is coming from somewhere else. And so yeah, we either, the people that come to our trips, as Jackie was saying, yeah, they either donate their time, they volunteer, they help, they give us their, they share with us their abilities, no, videography, editing, marketing, etcétera, etcétera. Pero también they support us. They come to the events. They spread the word to their friends, to their family, and that is when the net gets stronger.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we're building community. These aren't trips. They're not retreats. They're not, it's not an opportunity to go inward and, I mean, you do go inward naturally.
Oh, yeah, naturally.
Of course.
It happens.
But it's
not safari.
It's not a safari, and it's not a retreat. It's a solid, we call it a solidarity trip for a reason. And it's an invitation to become part of something bigger rather than an invitation to like work on yourself. It's an invitation to be part of a social movement, really, that like uplifts people. And we believe like in our hearts, in our gut, that when we uplift other communities, we are actually empowering ourselves, and we're all inextricably linked by a thread, if you will. No pun intended. Yeah, I mean, I've always said that my dream would be for One Thread Collective to be funded by like 5,000 people donating, you know, $20 a month. Like, I love the idea of this being a social movement as opposed to getting grants from the government or grants from big foundations. People have said to me, well, have you looked into the Amazon, the Bezos Fund, or the
Cruz Roja.
yeah, we have built this from the grassroots, from first my own personal, just me, and I'm not someone that comes from a background of having money, but me working in a restaurant and putting money aside each month to invest in One Thread, and then same with our co-founder, Megan. And then little by little, we started getting donations, and people started, you know, recognizing what we're doing. And now we have about 50 members. So we call them our Dream Weavers, and they donate either $25 a month or the equivalent in an annual donation, which is $300 a year. And we have amazing just community events and opportunities for our Dreamweavers to be like really part of the organization and to come to our donor-only dinners, and to they get a special newsletter where I go into not just like the pretty little like, oh, we just did this great workshop, blah, blah. It's also the hard stuff. So in the newsletters, we talk about like what we learned through trial and error, which is happens. We make mistakes all the time. So when you become a member, you really are part of our community. So that's, of course, like my goal is for everyone to just be a member.
Yeah, and it doesn't take much. I mean, $25 a month.
Oof, lunch in Santa Barbara.
Yeah, and you will see it's very obvious, like the change and the improvement that we have in the workshops, and as a personal growth for the artisans and for us, right? But it's something tangible. You are investing that money into something that tangible. You see the improvement and the growth. When we talk to, for example, Yanitza, you know, when she started, she could barely look at us in the eye when she was talking to us. She will like speak very de bajo volumen, sí, muy bajito. Y we decided to invest in her and make her our quality control person. And 6 months later, when we came back to Colombia, she was a totally different woman. She will be como upright, y she will talk with a lot of confidence, and she will share with us her questions, her insecurities, her ideas on how to improve some stuff, and it was just so powerful.
And then she left her husband who was abusing her.
Yep.
And abusing her children.
Yeah.
And she, came to one of our workshops where she learned about violence against women, and these are some of the only spaces they have in their entire lives to talk about these very private issues that women all over the world deal with in silence. And after that one workshop, Yanitza wrote to us and said, "I'm leaving my husband. He's been doing terrible things to me and my kids, and I need your help." So we helped her get out of that situation. It like gives me chills when I think about it, right?
Same.
Because just think about how much she put up with to get to that point, how many years she dealt with abuse and violence in the home. And, one workshop, but of course years of working with us and building this community. And now she's on a whole nother path. And her children are on, Nicole's crying over here. Not just her, but her 7 children, 7 kids are on a whole nother path in life. It doesn't take much. It takes a lot of heart and a lot of dedication, which we're very lucky. We have an incredible team in Colombia. We have Paola Restrepo, who is just one of the most outspoken, intelligent people I'll probably ever meet in my entire life. And not to mention definitely the most hardworking person I think I've ever met.
Yeah.
Maybe in the world, honestly. So we're very lucky that we have an incredible team that has so much heart invested in the project. And when you donate to our team, we make amazing things happen. And Paola makes amazing things happen.
We multiply the
bread. We take that $25 and we make it, we make a huge impact. You can make a donation at onethreadcollective.org. We have a donate button on the website. And then it'll bring you right to the page where you can sign up for monthly donations or one-time donations. And we're also in the middle, or we're at the end of our International Women's Day campaign. Our goal was to raise $25,000 by Saturday, International Women's Day. So that was several days ago. We got to 17,800, I think. So we have at least 6,000 more to raise in order to provide these monthly workshops that are probably the most important thing that we do. We have a workshop for sustainable community-led entrepreneurship and positive leadership. We have a workshop for our advanced leadership workshop on communications and management, and then our workshop on product innovation. We also have quarterly workshops that are not necessarily focused on weaving or community development, but on issues like mental health, sexual or reproductive health, violence against women, topics that help with personal development, not just entrepreneurship, because those two things are linked. If I had all the funding that I needed to kind of carry out the vision, the long-term vision that we have at One Thread Collective, it would look something like communities growing their own food and managing their own water and having nutritious food, because right now people are living off of rice and corn and coffee and sugar, which is not a level of nutrition that can really help like children's brains develop, and we see a lot of like cognitively the children are very behind because they don't have adequate nutrition when they're in their mother's bellies and throughout their lives. So nutrition, I think, is a big focus that we haven't had the ability to really sink our teeth into, because it's a complicated issue. Because in order to grow food, people need water. In order to have water, people need money. So we're sort of like moving up the ladder, starting with providing income for women, and then solving the water issue, then solving the food issue, and then going back to people growing their own food. Now that the climate is so different and the land is so different, that takes a lot of investment too. And then we have the issue of La Guajira transitioning from being very fossil fuel extraction based. Their economy, I think at least 60%, at one point I think it was something like 80% of their GDP in La Guajira is based around coal mining. And so like just transitioning from fossil fuels to renewables is a very tricky topic, and renewables also cause a lot of problems for indigenous communities. People still get displaced off their land. There's still an issue of people getting separated from their water source, privatization of land. And so thinking about like what other types of industries could help bring La Guajira forward without destroying the soil and the water and contaminating the land and privatizing the land. So, you know, I have this like vision that it might be crazy, but I think that hemp could have some sort of potential in La Guajira, because in the 70s and 80s, marijuana was growing in abundance, even in some of the communities that we work with now. And I know that there's so much potential with hemp, not only as a source for yarn and even a nutritious food, but also a building material. So I guess what I'm getting at is my vision for La Guajira is like food growing everywhere, reforestation, because some of the communities that we work in don't have any trees, and it's super hot, and the coal mine deforested 70,000 hectares of land, which absolutely irreversibly affected the water situation. And it's going to take many, many decades to restore the environment. It can never go back to what it was, but reforestation is a huge issue that needs to be addressed. And do you want to add anything do you have a vision that's different than mine?
No, I'm with you. I think the reforestation, and I know for a fact because I've been and I visited other projects around the world that also have been working with deforest areas, and the reforestation of that area, that territory, now it's super lush, abundant, and there are communities in Asia, in South America that I know that work in the reforestation, and they've done amazing things. And with the more plants that you grow, you bring in animals, you bring in rain, and the whole environment starts to work. So yeah, that is an interesting vision and very important to hacer hincapié.
We're getting there. One thread at a time. One mochila at a time. Thank you for being with us on this beautiful journey to uplift communities and spread abundance to places that are far away but we are connected to. And that abundance and that empowerment, it comes back, and you're part of that. Thank you for being here.
Suka wanita da suka wanita da kanau da waita wada kanau da waita wada kente kada kamariwa e maya na iwaya o ne na waya na